Hi, it's Gary. Welcome to today's video. Today, Fountain Pen Showdown Day, and I thought we'd do a showdown between two pens from HongDian. And they're two pens in the N series. We've got the N7 and we've got the N8. Slightly different pens, I'd say both in the N series though. What we're going to do is take a look at the pens. We'll see what's different between them, do some size comparisons, write in samples, and then I'll give my thoughts on these pens. Welcome down to the mat. Here we've got our two pens that we're going to take a look at today. We've got the HongDian N7. This is in the peacock pattern. Just slowly turn that around for you now. And then we've got the HongDian N8 in flying feathers. There you go, there's a quick look at that. We're not going to go into too much depth with each pen. What we're going to focus mainly on are the differences between the two. Let's start with a body walkthrough. The first obvious difference, it's the colour, isn't it? Two different colours. I'm not sure which I prefer, I've got to be honest, because I quite like them both. With the N8, this is actually slightly translucent. Not sure if that comes over too well on the camera, but I can actually see the converter inside the body. With the N7, solid colour, quite pretty though, isn't it? I love the chatoyancy we see with this. Leads to another immediate difference we'll look at in a little bit more detail. The N7, that's a piston filler. The N8 is a cartridge converter. The next thing we look at are the caps. We can see that the N7, that cap, ever so slightly longer. Not a lot, but it's enough that it's noticeable. The tops of the pens, if we take a look here, we've got there the logos, but we've got two different logos on them. The green one, the N7, that looks like, again, maybe peacock feathers going around there, where here on the N8, this looks like a bird with a crown on it. Both very similar shapes though. We come on down, he says, trying not to knock the pens all over the place. The clips, very similar in shape. I'm thinking the N8 might be slightly narrower. And obviously different trim colour. So we've got gold on the N7 and we've got silver on the N8. Their colours, obviously, they're not actual gold and silver. The caps seem to be very similar shapes. Let me just turn this around. So they come out to about maybe a third of the way down. Then they're straight all the way down. On the N7, here we've got the peacock pattern. There at the bottom we've actually got a peacock there. And then the rest of it is stylized with the flowers. The flowers, the feathers, aren't they? I don't know. Flowers and feathers, very different things, Gary. Top of the cap there, we've got peacock and HongDian. With the N8, here what we've got is a white cap and we've got their silver feathers. Got the word right that time. And again, up at the top there, we've got flying feathers. And near the bottom of the cap this time, we've got that same logo that we were seeing up on the top finial. Both pens have got a step down to the body. The bodies to the eye seem to be virtually identical. Obviously colour is different. We have got a difference here with the end finials. The N7 piston filler. So that end finial, that's actually what works the mechanism. Where on the N8 here, it's just a blind cap. And I'm not sure if it's glued on or if it's all part of the body. Let's take the caps off these. So we'll start with the N7. So we go half, one, about 1.5 turns there. And then with the N8, we go half, one, again about 1.5 turns. And that reveals two fairly different nibs. On the N8, this is a two-tone nib. The top of it is the silver colour. Then below that, we've got a gold coloured. Below the breather hole, we've got what looks like to be a Chinese pagoda coming all the way down Then at the bottom, we've got HongDian. This is a fine nib. The N8 nib, very different. All silver. We've got a different pattern at the top. Below that, we've got, since 1997, the word Hong, the word Dian, and then we've got M and 35. This is a medium nib. With the N8, as I say, this is a cartridge converter. There's the converter there. The converter comes with it. Metal fittings. So it's not a pen I would advise even thinking about eyedropping. The sections are slightly different. We put them next to each other. With the N7, it seems to be, I'm not sure if it actually is longer because of where the threads are. But on the N7, it seems to be slightly concave. Where the N8, that seems to be the same width. The N7 piston filler, we've got an ink window, so you can see your ink level. Let's pop the caps back on. The bottoms, we looked at the tops. Here we can see a difference in the size. I'm not sure if it comes over on the camera. Let me see if I can get this in there. We look like we've got 1 or 2 millimeters difference in length, the N7 being ever so slightly shorter. Let's swap over the view and we'll do some size comparisons. My first 2 pens that I've brought in, we've got a Pilot Metropolitan and a Lamy Safari. They're my standard pens that I use. Looking at this, they're all very much of the same length, aren't they? Let's take the caps off and look at them unposted. Unposted, again, very similar story. They're all more or less the same length. We can see we've got the number 6 nibs there here on the 2 HongDians, whereas the nibs on the Lamy Safari and that Metropolitan do look quite a lot shorter, don't they? Let's post these. Here we've got the pens posted. As we can see, there is a difference between the two. The N7 slightly shorter than the N8. Both of them post quite nicely, so they're fairly solid. In the hand, I do find both are too long. There's the N8. Let me just take the cap off. There it is unposted. Here's the N7. Could get away with this one, but unposted, again, it's quite nice. What I'm going to do is swap over the view, and we're going to fetch in some pens that are in roughly the same price range. So here are my price comparison pens. We've got the TWSBI Eco, 45 Australian dollars when I bought it. The HongDian N7, 45 Australian dollars, same price. The HongDian N8, 41 Australian dollars, slightly cheaper than the N7, but it's a cartridge converter rather than a piston. And then I've brought in a HongDian 1841. That was 40 Australian dollars. Again, cartridge converter. So we've got the N8 and the 1841, both cartridge converters. The N7 and the TWSBI Eco, both piston fillers. Let's swap over the view and we'll do some weights and measures. Here we've got the rule of measuring. We'll start with the N7. So with its cap on, that's 13.5 centimetres. Unposted, 12.3 centimetres. Posted, just get that to sit still, 15.7 centimetres. The body, at its widest point, that's 1.34 centimetres. The cap, at the widest point, 1.49 centimetres. And the section goes from 1.14 at the narrowest up to 1.21. Nice weights in there as well. We'll look at those in a second. The N8 feels a bit lighter. Again, we'll look when we do our weights. But our measurements, with the cap on, 13.7 centimetres. So 2 millimetres longer. Unposted, 12.3 millimetres, exactly the same as the N7. Posted, 16.3 centimetres, so there's a noticeable difference there, which we did see. The width of the body, It's 1.35 millimeters, so that's within the tolerance of my measurement for being the same. The cap, 1.49 centimeters, so again the same. And then the section goes from 1.11 up to 1.18. So there is a bit of a difference. It's also quite a lot narrower. Let's swap this over and fetch in the scales of weighing. Here we've got the scales of weighing, again starting with the N7. The full pen, 38 grams. The cap, 14 grams. The body, 24 grams. Let's look at the N8. As I said, it does feel lighter. 30 grams. So that's, roughly 10 grams lighter. The cap, 13 grams. It's about the same. And then 18 grams for the body. So again, the body is lighter. Let's get this out of the way and we'll fetch in the notepad of testing. Here we've got the notepad of testing, Oxford optic paper, standard paper I try and use for all my writing tests when I'm doing my comparisons. So we'll start with the N7. So nice pen to use unposted. So we've got here a HongDian N7. It's got a fine nib. And cost-wise, 45 Australian dollars. The ink is by Dominant Industry. And it's called Forest. Nice green ink. Although it's a green ink, and this is, I don't know, I would say it's a blue pen rather than a green pen. I do think it's quite a nice match. Drying times, as we go immediate. 10 seconds. 30 seconds. 1 minute. After a minute, smudging ever so slightly, not enough to need to do a 2-minute test. Let's move the mic and write a sentence. It's quite a pleasant pen to write with. Hopefully that feedback, that noise that I was getting is coming over. And although there was a fair amount of audible feedback, the actual writing experience, it was fairly smooth. There wasn't a lot of tactile feedback coming through. Line variation. Steel nib, so don't expect much. There's no pressure. That's with pressure. Yeah, slightly wider line. Not as nice an experience though, because it feels like it's dragging on the page. So no pressure, with pressure, none, with, none, and with. Flow test. Yeah, quite nice. Goes across the page. Again, not sure if it came through on the mic. Really nice feedback from that. Let's move the page up ever so slightly. There we go. Hopefully that gives us room for our second sample. So we're going for the N8 this time. So we've got a HongDian N8 with a medium nib, and it was 41 Aussie dollars. Immediately you can see a big difference between the line. I think the medium here, I think that's tending towards a broad rather than a medium, whereas that fine, I think that's actually going the other way, tending towards extra fine rather than fine. The ink, Dominant Industry. Forest. Using the same ink, this is something that a number of people have commented on. So where possible, I'm using the same ink when I do my writing samples. Let's do wetness check. So we go immediate. 10 seconds. 30 seconds. We're dry there at 30 seconds. So it's the same ink. The medium nib seems to dry an awful lot faster. Let's move the mic and write a sentence. Not as much feedback on this nib. It's still nice, it's still enjoyable to write with. It doesn't seem to be dragging as much on the paper either, so there's even less of a tactile feel at the moment. Let me just move this page up. For some reason it was jumping all over when I was writing today. Line variation. That was no pressure. Here we've got pressure. You know, again, we're seeing a noticeable difference in line there. Again, no pressure, with pressure, none, with, none, with. And a flow test. There we go, goes well across the page. So what are my thoughts on these pens? These are two pens that are very similar, but in some ways very, very different. Piston filler, cartridge converter. I would have loved if they'd have kept the idea of the piston filler for this N8. I really like the piston filler on the N7. I like the slight translucency there. It's not enough though that I can see what's going on. And I think if this was a piston filler with a more translucent barrel, a bit like the Eco, where you've still got a bit of pattern but you can see through it, I think that would have looked really nice. Both pens write really well. Got no problem with that. Had no issues with hard starts, had no issues with skipping. Do get quite a difference in the writing experience. More feedback comes through on that fine nib. I expect that anyway. It's still pleasant when I'm writing with the N8. And I've got to be honest, my preference between the two for writing experience would be the N8. But I think that's more because of the nib width. I'd love to be able to get an N7 with a medium nib and then try them against each other. They will write quite nicely unposted. They do feel a bit short, but not unusably so. But posted, I just find, the N8 too unwieldy. That's about 0.5 centimetre longer than the N7. The N7, again, feels a bit back heavy. It's usable, but again, my tendency, I use them unposted. When I post it on here, it does not post onto the cap. It posts here onto the top of the body. Enjoyable pens. They're nice to use. I mean, we're talking $4 difference in price. So in terms of the value, I think they're both really good. I think they're both nice pens to have. Not sure if I would call them starter pens. Maybe I would the N8. I think with that being the cartridge converter, that might be a better option if you're new to fountain pens. But they're enjoyable pens. I've enjoyed having these both inked up. It's actually been nice having them both with the same ink. And this is why, in one respect, that was really good feedback I got, because really enjoyable to use. So my final thing we're going to look at, I'm just going to fetch this in. This is Tomoe River 52 GSM. So here we've got the N7. You can see very similar. We've got that thin line. Do see more shading coming through on here, so we do see more character in that writing. If we compare that against the N8, that's nice. Again, very similar to what we saw on the Oxford Optic paper. I think we see more character there with the N7. So it's my thoughts on the HongDian N7 and the HongDian N8, both inked up with Dominant Industry Forest. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. What are your thoughts on the N7 and the N8? Now, I know there are other N pens, I just don't have them. These are the only two that I've got from that series. I may look at getting some of the other ones later on, but I've been limiting my pen purchasing this year, which is why I haven't done so. Please drop your comment down below. If there was one other pen in the HongDian N series for me to get, which one would you recommend? Please hit the thumbs up button every time you like, every time you comment, just helps with the YouTube algorithm. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel so that you can get new videos as I release them. I'll talk to you again soon.